Hey and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brian and today I'm going to go through what should be a key component of everybody's finances, sinking funds. But before we get into these magical things, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and if you enjoy the video, be sure to like it too. So, sinking funds. That's a bit of a weird name. This is a term that was made popular in the US by the great Dave Ramsey. And if you haven't heard of them or know how to use them, then stay right where you are. So what are sinking funds? Perhaps we should start off with a definition from the Oxford Dictionary. So it's defined there by a fund formed by periodically setting aside money for the gradual repayment of a debt or replacement of a wasting asset. So this definition is a pretty good overall explanation for what sinking funds are, but how does that apply to your day-to-day personal finances? So essentially, sinking funds are pots of money that are separate from your personal account that are used to save up for an expected future payment, such as Christmas, birthdays, or a car expense like an MOT or a service. So expected is the key word here because it differs from an emergency or an unexpected expense, which is what an emergency fund is for. And it's important to differentiate between the two because they both have very different purposes. If you want to learn more about emergency funds and why you most definitely need one, check out the video linked above. So how do you use sinking funds? Well, firstly, you need to establish what it is that you're actually going to be saving up for. Ask yourself, what is the desired purpose for this money? And you need to be very specific. Setting money aside and just telling yourself that you'll use it when a bill comes up is better than nothing. However, it lacks intentionality. So Christmas is a good example to use here because most of us celebrate it and almost all of us spend a fair bit of money around that time. And the strange thing about Christmas is that it manages to creep up on you despite the fact you know full well Christmas is in December every year. Then you're going to need to decide on an amount that you're prepared to spend and spread it out across the year. So for Christmas, everybody's budget will vary and you have a degree of control. However, other things like car insurance, home insurance, car repairs are a bit more objective rather than subjective. Yes, you can shop around and get cheaper insurance and take your car to the cheapest garage, but there's always going to be an amount that you must spend on these. So you need to create a sinking fund for them. So now that you have an amount required for your sinking fund, you're going to need to divide that amount by the number of months until it is needed. So for example, if you decide you want to spend £500 next Christmas and it's 12 months away, simply divide 500 by 12 to give you the monthly amount that you need to put away into your sinking fund every single month. And in this case, just under £42. Now, this seems really obvious and simple, but most of us aren't doing it. Next, you're going to need to make the amount automatically leave your bank as close to payday as possible to make it feel like a direct debit. Before you know it, you're building your Christmas fund without even thinking about it. Remember the adverts for Park Christmas Savings where you pay them a monthly direct debit and they're going to kindly give you gift cards as presents close to Christmas. It's basically the same thing and you're doing it yourself and you're not getting charged for the privilege. By making the process automatic, you get used to the amount leaving your account and you minimize the surprise purchases you will need to make in life. People inflate their lifestyle to what they earn, so normal is just spending all of your monthly income until it reaches zero and not actually being intentional with where you've put it. Most people get a pay rise and buy a slightly nicer car on finance, or get a bigger house, or buy some fancy clothes to impress other people. Now, I'm not saying you can't or shouldn't have those things, but it needs to be an intentional act and should only happen once all your financial affairs are in order, including budgeting every single month, being debt-free, having an emergency fund, and ensuring that you're investing. So by making this process automatic, you'll just adapt to what's left and it's going to become the new normal. And best of all, the new normal will be having the money to pay for the car insurance renewal you forgot about and not stressing in November that you can't afford to buy your loved ones presents. The beauty of budgeting in this way is that you can use it for absolutely any expected expense. And the biggest benefit that I've got from sinking funds is the feeling of security. I don't have that money anxiety like I used to. I used to bury my head in the sand and tell myself it'll all be fine and that I'll find money somewhere when I need it. Inevitably though, I had to resort to either debt or having to go without something to pay for that thing that I should have expected in the first place. Sinking funds provide emotional stability when it comes to your personal finance. So I thought it might be useful to give you some examples of the main sinking funds that I actually use and why I use them. So firstly, a car insurance sinking fund. So for the first time last year, I began paying for car insurance annually rather than monthly, and it saved a good chunk of money as I now don't pay the interest that I used to be charged for the convenience of having a monthly direct debit. And all it takes is that first payment to get the annual ball rolling, then you can just create a sinking fund for the next year. And your payments into this sinking fund will be cheaper than the monthly payment that it would have been had you paid monthly. And you don't pay a penny in interest, and the best of all, you actually get a cheaper deal by paying annually. And next, a Christmas fund. So I've already talked about Christmas, but it most definitely is the one that absolutely everybody should be using. So in my household, this sinking fund incorporates not just the cost of presents, but the total cost of Christmas entirely. So the total target amount that we're going to be saving for includes presents, but also things like food, planned extra fuel costs, accommodation, or any other costs that are associated with that Christmas season. And the beauty of doing this is that it makes the month of December just like any other month of the year when it comes to your finances. And you can still put money away into other savings or investments. Next, food shopping. And out of all of the sinking funds that I use, the one that changed my finances the most was this, the food shopping sinking fund. I had no idea how much money I was spending on the weekly food shop, daily trips to the supermarket, and the odd bit of lunch here and there at work. Everybody thinks that they know how much money they spend on food each month, but you could probably double it and you'll still be short. It is easy to convince yourself that spending a load of money at the supermarket is a necessity because you need food to survive, right? Whilst obviously that's true, supermarkets don't just sell food anymore. Not only is it easy to justify buying food that isn't great for the budget or probably your waste, you can even put clothing and electrical items into your trolley and it still falls under the supermarket umbrella on your bank statement. So go back and check your bank statements for your food shops over the last 3 months and be honest with yourself. Write it down, look at that figure and think, is this more than I actually want to spend? So we now set a really strict budget and set aside into separate spaces on the banking app Starling. So prior to going shopping, we'll make a list and I'll check how much money we have left in that space for the rest of the month. Then I'll work out how much money we can actually spend because when they hit zero, we're all going hungry. Okay, we're not going to go hungry, but it's a great psychological trick to stop you from spending a lot of money on unnecessary items. It forces you to be intentional and plan your shopping so that you don't impulse buy every time you go. Okay, so where should you keep your sinking funds? Now, there's a few different ways that you can manage your sinking funds, and it comes down to your personality really, and the way that you already manage your money. So find the way that works for you because truthfully, everybody's different. So you may consider the envelope system. Now, this is an old-fashioned way to withdraw cash and place it into an envelope that has the sinking fund name written on the front of it. Although I really like the idea of a visual hands-on approach like this, these days it just isn't practical to have envelopes stuffed with money lying around the house, especially in times like this where shops are becoming more and more cashless. So you could also have separate bank accounts. Now, one way that many people manage this method is by having separate accounts for different uses. So you could just transfer your money between different bank accounts and this will make it very difficult to accidentally spend any money that you've set aside for a specific purchase. The issue here though is clearly the fact that it's very impractical and requires you a lot of time in the beginning to open up different accounts. And you'll probably just have more cards lying around. And in my opinion, the solution to this is the option that I use and the one that I couldn't recommend highly enough is the option that's offered by challenger banks, Spaces and Pots function. So I bank with Starling. If you want to check out the review that I did on the Starling Bank app, I'll link it above. Needless to say, I think they're pretty good. They are one of the new generation of banks that are online only, and many of these banks that are known as challenger banks offer functions known as Spaces, Pots, Purses. They all got different names, but they all have the same function, and they allow you to have a separate space in your bank account to store money. Essentially, they've created a virtual sinking fund. The two most popular banks that use this function are Starling and Monzo, but high street banks are now starting to introduce this too because the innovation is leaving them behind. And that really is the easiest way to manage sinking funds, and I urge you to have a look at it and give it a go. It really is 21st century banking that's integrated sinking funds, but also combines an element of goal setting too. So there you have it, sinking funds. And if you don't already use them, I would recommend that you start today. If you have any questions that you want to ask me, let me know in the comment section below. If you got any value whatsoever from this video, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified when I release content in the future.